Hello,
Hey,
hello.
how are you doing today?
I am good. I just told you I'm like hanging in there. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's busy, but good. I mean, busy is better than being like, hey, I have nothing going on and I'm dying of boredom. So I can't be mad at that.
I don't know. Sometimes dying of boredom sounds nice.
We
Like,
just have twins. I
yeah,
was,
when life is crazy, you're like, I would love to be bored and have nothing to do right now.
yeah, I was with my sister's twins on Sunday. And man, I was there like a long day. I got there like 1 o'clock and stayed till like 11. I was tired,
Yes,
tired. So I can only imagine how you're feeling about life right now.
it is something, but it's fun. So it's all good. Good to see you. I cannot believe it's April.
I know. It's crazy how fast it's
I know.
moving.
And I was like, we have a stream today. I was like, I just did a stream. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's already April. Y'all know I only do streams once a month now. And they're so, um, I miss y'all. I wish I was doing them more frequently, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe it's been a month.
I know. Well, I'm so happy you're here. I always enjoy the first stream of the month because it feels like homecoming. I get to
I
see you.
know we're back together.
Yes.
Well, it's so exciting to see you. And a couple things I wanted to chat about before we hop in, you guys, is just a quick reminder and plug that the IOCDF conference this summer is in Chicago. I am so excited about it just because I love Chicago in summer, and I love this conference. So just a reminder to start thinking about that. I feel like April, we're like 3 months out. It's a really good time to start looking at your flights and getting your hotels and getting stuff booked and just start blocking your calendar and making plans. So make sure you go to iocdf.org to learn more about the upcoming conference. Chris, I would love to hear your thoughts on just why you think the conference is such a great resource and why you would encourage people to go.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, the conference, it's hybrid this year. So if you can make it to, I think that is a link. Oh, he's putting it up in the chat. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's different. So first of all, it's hybrid. So if you are somebody that cannot come out in person, you can definitely do the hybrid track. But if you can make it in person, I know it's a commitment. I just think it's the community. I mean, I would say obviously you're going to be able to get some really, really incredible talks. You're going to hear from some of the experts. I think one of the things that has always amazed me about this conference is when I've gone to conferences in the past, some of the big names will like come and speak and then they disappear. What I like about this conference is you can go up to a John Grayson, to a Liz McIngvale. You can go up to, Michelle Massey or Patrick McGrath and just ask them questions, John Hirschfield, and talk to them. And yeah, I just think it's you get that one-on-one connection. You're getting those talks, you're getting the information, but it's community. Being that Saturday night party where you're surrounded by thousands of people after the keynote and everybody in that room knows what you're going through. I think it's incredible. Plus, at my first conference, that's when I met. Well, I didn't meet you, I saw you, which is crazy. Do you even remember San Diego? Because it was San Diego.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing at that
What year
conference?
was that? Like,
Oh, I couldn't even tell you.
I feel like 15 years ago.
It might, yeah.
Okay,
It
we'll have to
feels
look it up. But yeah,
we'll
I
have
remember.
to look it up. Yeah, I mean, how are you? Well, that probably wasn't your first conference, but
No.
what was your first conference experience? What was that
Oh
like?
my goodness. Okay, so my first conference, I was 17 and I was presenting. I was presenting with, I think, another individual with lived experience and with a clinician. And I was so nervous. I remember to present and to tell my story. But it was such an awesome experience where it was the first time I really felt like, oh my gosh, there's a community of individuals who are like me, right? And who understand and who are struggling and who need support. And so anyway, so I loved it. It was so great. And now the thing I always tell people is that I really do think if someone were to ask me, like, what has been the biggest champion for your career and your path and your journey and the work that you do, I would tell you single-handedly, it is the conference. Like the conference is the place that I made mentors. It's the place I started to build my network professionally. It's the place I started to feel more confident about treatment and understand what treatment could do for me and how it could get me to a place of freedom. And so the conference for me is so much more than a weekend where we get to learn about OCD. Like, yes, that happens and that's awesome, right? But the main thing for me is that it really was the diving board, like the launch pad to so much of my future.
Yeah, I think for me, my first experience, I mean, it's funny because on paper it would have been a failure. I know we bought it for the weekend. I have family down in San Diego, and the plan was to like go down to San Diego, stay there the weekend, go to the conference. And I just couldn't stay. I only stayed one day. I was so triggered. I was like just starting treatment. My therapist had told me about it. I think I might have been like 2 or 3 months in a treatment, but I will always remember that's where I saw you speak. And it's funny because it's always weird how like things happen. And I think, my mom wanted to go to a talk for parents, but you were speaking and I just went to the talk. Somebody was like, I was like, looked lost. I don't even remember which IOCDF staff member. I think they're like, go to this talk. And I saw you speak. And I remember you being young and you were talking about your journey. And you were kind of the first person I heard that like treatment works and people can get better. Because mind you, I just started treatment, never even knew what OCD was prior to the diagnosis a few months earlier, and didn't know that you could get better. And I remember hearing you speak. And even though it was a total disappointment to have to like leave the conference, it stuck in my head. And I remember talking to my therapist about you. I don't know if I remembered your name, but probably because you have the same name as my mom, so I probably did remember your name. But I remember,
so I was memorable enough that you remembered my name.
Yeah, you did. No, I was gonna say, of course I remembered your name. You have the same name as my mom, so I would have remembered. But I remember going and just talking about it and her having that conversation with me, like, yes, people get better. Like I see clients, they get better. And it was crazy because, as you know, people are submitting to be IOCDF advocates. And on some of the videos, there was a couple where they were like, oh, the reason I want to become an advocate is because I've seen Liz, I've seen Ethan, I've seen Chris, I've seen Katie. And it's just crazy. It's like you forget, like you didn't leave that conference being like, yeah, Chris Trondsen's now going to go get better and become a therapist and an advocate, right? It's one of those things where it's like the community that you get out of the conference touches so many people. And I always get so hyped when you like see someone at the conference their first year and they're in it. And then like 2-3 years later, they're speaking. And then a couple years later, they're like going to become a therapist. It's just cool first full circle. So that's why we do what we do. And we love talking to you guys. And we're happy you're at this stream.
100%. It's such a great opportunity to connect, meet others, be inspired. And also, I think, like you said, Chris, for so many that are listening, you might think, well, how could that happen for me? Like if I went to the conference, I would barely just be making it to talks. And I just want to say, like, that is okay. Most of us were there too. It's a slow progression, right? But the point is it can be the start of a totally different future for you. And I just love that. I want to start today's live stream. Well, let me give a couple disclaimers. So as you guys know, our live streams are intended to be educational and supportive. They are not intended to replace therapy. So we will encourage you throughout the stream to be getting specific treatment advice from your individual clinician. IOCDF and or our live streams are not a crisis hotline. So if you're feeling unsafe or suicidal in your local, please call 988, go to your local emergency room or call 911. And of course, if you're not in the United States, please follow your local emergency services. Today, we are going to just chat. There's no agenda, no topic, which means it's my favorite live streams because I love us just being able to chat and catch up. And y'all know Chris and I always have quite a bit on our stream of consciousness. And it's rare that we're just like, what do we talk about today? So we're going to hop in. But Chris, the first thing I want to talk about is I got this amazing email from a patient's mom last night about his recovery and how he's doing. And it was so great. And one of the things she said in there is she's been doing a lot of advocacy and work. And she has just really come to the realization that there's often like two groups of individuals who are able to do treatment to get to freedom and to live their life and to get to this incredible place of functioning. And then individuals who really get stuck in the recovery process. And I thought it was just such a stark reminder for me of, oh my gosh, such great language, such a great way to describe it. And yes, that happens so much. And I see this happening a lot, even with advocates, right? Where individuals will start advocating. I started advocating when I was 17. I was not in full recovery yet. I was not at a place of freedom. However, my advocacy kind of pushed me to do more treatment and to get better so that I could then become a clinician and do all these things I wanted to do, now be a mom and all the stuff. And I can see where at times when I stalled in my treatment, right, or I was a little bit stagnant, I could have gotten stuck in that phase of recovery. And because I was advocating, I could have actually sometimes even been encouraged to stay more stuck in that phase of recovery because so much of my identity was kind of meshed with being sick or struggling or having OCD, right? That was kind of part of how I knew myself. I can remember thinking, like, I used to say language like, this will always be my struggle. This will always be my thing I have to deal with. And now I look back at that old me and some of that language, and I'm like, oh, why did I say that? I cringe, because I'm like, I was stuck in recovery. I was accepting being stuck as my future versus, okay, I need to get out of this, right? I need to get unstuck. I really thought being stuck was where I had to stay. And I would just love to hear your thought process on it, how you moved from one to the other, what you tell people that are in that place, or that maybe even feel like this is the best I'm going to get. Like, this is what recovery looks like, when we know it can actually be so much more.
Yeah, it's so funny. Going back to the earlier conversation we had, I know you've said before, like, hey, I look back at old advocacy that I've done, and I wish my messaging was different. It's funny because all I remember from meeting you that first time at the conference was that your message was hopeful. So I think you always got to give yourself a little bit more credit, because I felt hopeful leaving. I think, two thoughts that come to mind too is, one, for some reason, I never read, or my therapist never told me that OCD was a chronic condition. And so for some reason, because I didn't hear that, I thought it was something that you could like wipe out fully. And although we know that's not accurate, I always was like, I'm going to go to the finish line. Like, I'm going to be at a point where, I remember life, OCD was part of my life since I was a little kid, but I remember a part of my life where I didn't even know OCD was present because it was so minute. So I really swung for the fences. And it wasn't really until actually I would come to conferences later on where people would be like, it's chronic, you always have to manage it. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if we should be saying it like that. And I love the new messaging and this idea of like, what your client's mom was saying is like, people can really get better. But it reminds me, we had a new person join my adult group on Tuesday, and it was really cool because all the people that had been there longer were talking to them, and we just got in a good discussion about this very topic of like what mindset you need to be in. And the mindset needs to really be like, hey, you are in a situation currently where you consistently are seeking out danger and running from it and avoiding it. And really what we're asking you to do is to start to recognize the way your mind has kind of created this world where you're like, I always say you're in the Hunger Games and everything is dangerous, and really starting to learn what's going on and start to live that life where you're pushing back and pushing through. And so I think as people continue to come to these lives and conferences, what I hope you guys are hearing from Liz and myself is that the goal of treatment isn't like, hey, I'm at like 50% and I just find ways to sort of manage, it's really just like, hey, these are challenges that I'm going to overcome, and I really want to thrive. And that's how I feel. That's when I see Liz with her family, and when I get to see her in person, we're thriving. It doesn't mean that every day is perfect, but I always remind people most of the time when I'm stressed or frustrated or overwhelmed, it has nothing to do with OCD at all. It's usually like I'm too much on my plate, or I'm driving up to LA and there's traffic. And so, it's you can get to that point where you have made that decision that you're going to keep pushing. And I don't know what it is, Liz, but I see the people that get better. It's like there's this decision they make that it's like, I need to stop being in this culture of avoidance. Everything needs to change for me. I need to be in my head and really just like, hey, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to use the tools I'm given. And I want to be at a position where I'm thriving versus just kind of holding on and hanging on.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Because I do think you're right, Chris. I think there is a decision. Like, I think that for a long time when I was struggling with my OCD, I knew what I needed to do to get better, and I candidly wasn't willing to do it, right? I was willing to do enough to function. So for example, I would do enough to be able to go to class or do some of my homework or show up for internship, but I was still struggling a lot doing safety behaviors, doing different compulsions, and avoiding in different ways. And so I was making that choice to hold on. And I feel like when I was really struggling, if people used that language, I got really upset, right? Because I felt like this isn't a choice. You think I want to do this? And I think there's a lot of confusion around that, which is that OCD is ego dystonic in the sense that you don't want to be doing the compulsions. You don't enjoy them. They don't bring you pleasure. And at the same time, it actually is a choice, right? It feels like we don't have a choice because it feels so triggering. It feels so anxiety provoking. Like, of course, it doesn't feel like it's a choice when the not doing it makes you feel so terrible, right? So I want to validate that. However, it is a choice. You are still choosing to do this kind of quick fix safety behavior to feel better. And it's perpetuating the cycle and continuing to tell OCD that it's real, that it's dangerous, that we need to respond to it. And so I'm just curious for you. I know you've talked a little bit about this, of how like when your mom would drive you to treatment, and like your mom's real optimism for your journey and your ability to get better, that she kind of didn't give you a choice. It was like, no, you're going to get better. You're right. Y'all didn't really talk about not getting better or what that would look like. But I'm curious more from your mindset. Like, maybe it wasn't then, maybe it's now, maybe it's 6 months ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, but like throughout your journey, there probably are still some triggers. There probably are still some things that kind of get you, or that maybe sometimes you either give into or have the urge to give into. When was it that you feel like you really made that choice of OCD and anxiety, or BDD as well for you, right, are not going to control my life anymore, even though this is hard?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It wasn't even during treatment. I mean, I think I had in treatment, my mindset, like you said, was my mom saying, you're going to get better. And I knew my mom never held it over my head, but I come from humble background. I'm not poor. I didn't grow up on the streets, but I mean, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. And, my mom during Christmas would ask, we didn't do gifts. And she would say, can you donate to the IOCDF if you want to give our family a gift? And I know my mom works at a hospital and she'd be eating meals at work to save money. So I knew it was a financial strain for us to go through therapy. So I think that and my mom was what got me better. But I would say it wasn't until like after, and I started re-engaging in life. And I think we've talked about this before. I feel like that was really treatment, is like once I got back into school and dating and work. But there was a decision I made, and the visualization I had is like sitting at a big old table. I don't know why, I just pictured like you're a CEO, you're in a big office, and you have this big table, and it was like, anything that's going to come across my desk that's OCD, I'm going to reject it. I'm going to push it away. And I made that conscious decision. It was probably about like 6 months to a year after treatment, because I was engaging in life and I was like, I want better for myself. And what that looked like is, I remember, making choices based out of fear, where it was like, I got invited to a trip once and I didn't go because I'm like, I can't go on planes, there's radiation. Or I would go to the dentist and lie and be like, I don't need any x-rays because of the x-rays. But there was that click where I finally said, look, I'm not going to live like this anymore. And so I would start to make those decisions where I would really lean in. And so one example I always give my clients is when I was working at LA Fitness, they needed people to re-rack their weights. And I had harm OCD really bad. And I thought I was going to rack them incorrectly. They were going to fall on a member. Maybe they were laying on a bench, it'd fall and hit their head. I would hurt someone. I told people, I'm like, I want to rack the weights. It's a good way to kind of stay in shape. And I racked weights every single day at that damn gym because I knew that's what I needed to do. And so there was that mindset shift probably about a year after treatment, I think, where it was just like, that's going to be me. I'm going to seek OCD out. I visualize like, I want to go to OCD's house. I want to wake it up in the middle of the night and be like, look, dude, we're going to go rack weights and it may fall and hurt people. Or, when I would drive, I had a lot of OCD, not really hit and run, but a lot of like, I got to be paying attention. I can't look anywhere. And I was like, no, I'm not going to swerve and stuff, but I'm going to listen to music like everybody else. I'm going to put one hand on like everybody else. So I think there was just this shift where it was like, I have to keep going through it until it gets to a point. And I trusted, based on my time in treatment and from what I was hearing from advocates, is if I kept doing that, there would be that day. And I think it was about, after I made that mindset shift, it was probably 2 years later where I'd wake up some days and just be like, dude, OCD feels more like a past. Didn't mean it was at zero, but it felt like a past experience versus a current one.
I love
How about
that.
for you? Like, what do you think it
Yeah.
was?
Well, I've talked a lot about this, that I kind of give this analogy that I feel like treatment is like a 70% goal, and then we've got 30% to go. And what I mean by that is that I feel like treatment gets a lot of us to like 70% of functioning, right? So we're 70% better, which for most people, 70% is amazing, right? For myself included, it was like, I can take a shower again quickly, and I can wear whatever clothes I want in my closet, and I can go to school, and I can have friends and do all the things, go out to eat, and you name it. And so that getting to that 70% was so amazing and rewarding. And I kind of stalled there, right? I kind of got stuck in my recovery process at, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to be at the 70%. Like, this is as good as it's going to get. This is good enough. This is awesome. This is recovery, right? That's what I thought. And as I started integrating and doing more things in life, as you said, that's when that 30% actually didn't feel awesome and exciting anymore. It felt super annoying. I was like, I don't want this. I don't want this 30%. Like, this is horrible. It's so annoying. And so I kind of worked on it here and there. However, for majority of my adult life, I was able to keep 30% and still function. And I was accepting being okay with it. And I've talked about this before at OCD SoCal. When I had Olivia, it's when it was like, I am not willing to keep that 30%. And it was my first daughter where I was really like, again, even with my husband, like I love him, but like relationships I was in, I could keep the 30%. It's still strained to the relationship. It wasn't necessarily healthy, but I could do it. Right. Where when I had my kid, I was like, I am not willing to I don't want to be doing rituals around them, doing rituals with them, but also I'm done with this. Like, I don't have space in my life anymore for OCD. And now I think about my life and how busy I am and how crazy it is. And I'm like, how could I could, right? But like the priority I would be choosing in that moment to do OCD behaviors over being with my kids and other things, that shift was something I really needed. Now, I don't want individuals to think what I'm saying is that, if you have kids, you should never be doing rituals and you should, right? I had good treatment and I knew what I needed to do. And I was able at that point to just make a choice and engage in it. So people need to have good treatment first, right? You're not just I'm not saying like, if you have OCD and you haven't had treatment and you have kids, you shouldn't be doing rituals. It's like, well, no, of course you are. You don't have the tools yet. But I had the tools. I knew what I needed to do. And I knew to myself, like every day I would say to myself, like, this is a choice. Like, I'm choosing to do a ritual right now. I knew that I didn't need to. And when I did it, what it was doing, but I really struggled to not do it. And so that was really the big shift for me. And I always tell people the shifts happen when life becomes loud and you don't have space for OCD to still be yelling. It doesn't happen if we keep life quiet, right? So when I hear patients that are leaving our program say things like, well, I'm still struggling, so I can't have a job. I'm still struggling, so I can't go back to school. My answer is like, you're struggling, which is even more the reason why I want you going back to school. Why it's even more the reason I want you getting that job, right? Is because being like, if you're struggling and you don't go engage in life, we can actually guarantee you're probably going to keep struggling because you're allowing space for the struggle. I want you to get busy and do life to where you actually don't have space to struggle anymore. You don't have space or time to still ritualize.
Yeah, one thing that while you're talking, what it made me think, I think another thing that was a bigger shift, maybe not so much early on after treatment, but like more in like the recent years, is just the word yes. I mean, I know that I remember when I was speaking at Game Changers, Chrissy Hodges asked me to speak at a conference in Colorado, and it was a big snowstorm. It was like -3 degrees. And I was so anxious because I don't have that kind of clothes. And it sounds stupid, right? It's like, well, go buy the clothes. And, but my brain was like, you've never been in that kind of snow. It's an hour and a half away from the airport. How are you going to get there? Where are you going to get snow clothes in Southern California, right? And it was like, my brain was like, you know what? It's so much easier to just say no. But I was like, that is not Chris. Like, that is not who I am. I don't say no strictly because it's hard. I'm like, thank you, brain, for listing out the problems. You're always there to kind of ruin or, rain on my parade. I'm going to do it. I'm going to say yes. Or when the BDD Foundation asked me to speak in the UK, I've never been international. I've never been on that long of a flight. I have obstructive sleep apnea. I get really nervous about, can I plug stuff in? Because if I don't use my CPAP, I can't really function. So I had a lot of like angst around that trip. And I was like, yes, I will come speak. I bought the tickets. I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. And I think you, myself, and Allegra did a stream probably a year now or 2 years ago, but about trusting yourself. And I really think that's what facing those fears taught me, is like my ability to handle things. So when I went to the UK and thrived and had a great time, or, Chrissy has a picture of me like bundled, but I was able to be in -3 degree weather, right? Or I went to Norway and Iceland recently, and there was a lot of things that were hard, just time change and sleep and hours, but I made it work. And I think that's what I tell my clients is, as a clinician, I see your guys' strengths. I see you doing the things you tell me you guys want. You just have to say yes and show up. Trust that you, with your clinician support and with your family and friends support and community support like this stream, you will be able to do it. I think OCD is on a smear campaign. It makes us sound weak. It's constantly trying to tell us to not trust ourselves. And so I think facing those things that are tough really reconnects you with like you and your human spirit and your ability to thrive.
It is on a spear campaign. I like it.
I know. I keep telling clients, I'm like, think about it. OCD is on a smear campaign, right? So one of my clients has hit and run, and I'm like, I always ask this to my hit and run clients. I'm like, tell me about all your tickets, accidents, and like hit and runs, DUIs. Have you had jail time? And they always look at me like, what the hell, Chris? No, I got a parking ticket when I was 16. And I'm like, okay, so you're not coming into my office with like a rap sheet from driving. So how is OCD smear campaigned you so hard that you're coming in here saying on a daily basis, I'm dangerous behind the wheel and I'm going to kill people? I'm like, OCD's on a smear campaign. It's passing out flyers about you. It's taking out radio ads. Like, it's conned you into thinking you're this horrific driver that shouldn't drive. So I'm like, let's go back against it. Just like it's going pretty hard with its ad campaigns. Like, we got to go hard right back. So I think that's kind of the mindset and the spirit we got to have. I love your podcast. I'm behind on episodes, but what I love about the message of your Anxiety Society podcast is like, we have that kind of choice. I mean, you talk about it sometimes on like a more macro level, but I think individually we have that choice to say like, do I want to figure out how to have a safe, comfortable, avoidant life? You can Uber everywhere. You can move right down the street from your job. You can have other people drive you. But what I've seen and what I've experienced is one day you're going to have to drive. There's going to be something that comes up. And why would you want to be on the defense? What about getting behind your wheel every day, using your tools and driving and taking your life back? I think that's powerful where we got to be at.
Yeah. And I think like, I love what you're saying is that, once you have that mindset shift of understanding that like, this is OCD's goal, right? Is to get me and to win. And the reality is like, I'm actually not falling for it anymore. I am not, you're fake news. Like, it's fake news all day long, and I am not going to respond. I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to deal with it. It really does make such a difference to start with that mindset shift of not only being able to recognize it's OCD, but also kind of gamifying it, right? Like, okay, like that's the best you've got, or, oh, that's the best you're going to throw, or bring it on. I'm not afraid of you, versus, okay, today I'm going to try to not get triggered, and I'm going to try to not be anxious, and I'm going to try to get things done that I want to do or that I've been avoiding. That is a recipe for OCD to be like, awesome, I'm going to throw triggers at you. I'm going to make you anxious. I'm going to do all the things. And so part of, treatment, of course, you need ERP, you need to understand the tools, you need to do your core fear work. Like, we know all of that. You know all of that. If you don't watch some of our live streams, you can watch the ERP 101, the core fear live stream, some of the main basic ones that really go through what does effective treatment for OCD look like. That needs to happen first. Number two, though, it's really being able to change your mindset, right? To have this mindset of, that isn't me, right? Like Chris being like, OCD is going to throw this noise, and I kind of want to just bail and not go on this flight because of my triggers, but I'm not going to no-show or not commit to an awesome opportunity to make a difference and to do something that's valuable and values-based to me. And so I want us to really be thinking about, what are the things in life we want to be doing that are values-based, that make us feel good, that make us feel valued, that are important to us, and make sure that we're not letting OCD tell us no for those things, right? That we're saying yes to life and no to OCD, not no to life and yes to OCD.
Well, I think one thing that you pointed out as well is like, what I tell people is like, look, you can live that avoidant lifestyle. You can absolutely rearrange your lifestyle so that you don't have to be triggered and be anxious, right? The problem, though, is what people start to realize. I think I realized it when I was at my worst, and I think people realize it later on if they keep giving in, is it ends up getting to a point where your compulsions aren't even enough anymore. Like, you do your compulsions and it's just a function. You don't even get that relief. Or sometimes you're doing your compulsions and it's actually making it worse. You go to wipe down some contaminant stuff with a wipe, and then you see that it's expired, and then your brain is like, oh, it's expired chemicals all in my house, but I'm not clean enough to get in my car to go to the store. And then you get stuck, you break down, you're struggling. And so I think that was one of the reasons why I also went head first into treatment, is because I'd gotten to that point after an attempt, after being, reduced to like moving into my grandma's basement and stuff. I mean, it really was at that point too, where I was like, the biggest reason I was so open to treatment is every compulsion that I had done years prior didn't work anymore. And now it was like my mattress was dirty, so I needed to throw out my mattress. I don't have buy new mattress money. If I would have known you, I would have been like, girl, can your dad throw me a new mattress? But it was like, I didn't, right? And so now I'm sleeping on a couch because my bed is contaminated, but then my couch is contaminated. But I don't want to lay on the floor because it's dirty. So it's nighttime and I'm just crying in a ball because I'm like, I can't sleep on the floor, can't sleep on my mattress. I'm coming up with new ways to like lay out blankets so that I can clean, but the blanket's not, I mean, it just, you get to a point where it's never enough. And I think that was really aha moment for me early on in treatment, is like, everything I do is not enough. But when I seem to face my fears, because a lot of times people will say, well, how do I deal with the anxiety as I face my fears? I think of it as like putting out a candle. It's like when you really run head for first, you don't need 3 hours of self-soothing meditations, because the anxiety doesn't last for 3 hours once you face it. It lasts for 3 hours when you compulse, because you're consistently telling your brain for hours that what I just did was the worst thing I ever made a choice to do. But yeah, I mean, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I'm just so passionate. And I think that the people, I'm revigored. We were looking at new advocates applying and stuff, and it's just hearing different people's stories. It like revigors. And I want people so bad watching this right now to know you can get better. Just trust Liz's words, trust the conversation we're having. It's hard. I know sometimes when it's like, well, it's a choice, people get defensive, but I'm like, actually look at it being a choice as empowering. You get to do something about it. It's not being done to you.
And that's the big thing, right? Is can we look at this as an opportunity to strengthen a muscle, right? So think about at the gym, if you are carrying a 50-pound dumbbell and you have to carry that around all day, like I'd be out of breath. There's no way I could carry it. That would be exhausting. And if I dump some of it and I only have to carry now a 20-pound dumbbell, right? That's way easier. It feels a lot lighter. But what happens after a day or two of carrying around that 20-pound dumbbell? I feel the same way. Exhausted. It's super heavy. I'm annoyed. I hate it. I'm frustrated. I'm having to carry this around. And honestly, even if I move to a 2 or 3 or 5-pound dumbbell, right? Like at first it feels like, yeah, big relief compared to the 20, but it's also still so annoying, right? I don't have space for this. I don't want it. If I totally drop those dumbbells and I have nothing to carry around anymore, I am going to feel so much better. And I want us to think about that like sometimes when we reduce, yes, that's helpful. Like that's great. That's awesome. But the goal is freedom. It is not, can I reduce enough to where I can function because like I can still do everything I need. It's only a 3-pound dumbbell. It's like, no, let's get rid of this altogether to where we have no dumbbell and we're totally having freedom and that weight is completely off of us.
Yeah.
All right, we've got to get to pre-submitted. So we are going to live questions. So we're going to jump in and start there.
We could start with 1206. We have Morgan. Morgan is new to our community. I saw earlier. Hey, Morgan. I saw an earlier post from her. She just came across the IOCDF. So this is like one of her first experiences. She said, Morgan at 1206 says, am I the only one that gets nervous listening to OCD videos? I'm having a good day and don't want triggers. What I just wanted to add to that, Morgan, I know you just found us, so I totally understand that it's going to take some time to get comfortable. I just saw that it looks like you're starting therapy. You have an appointment with someone. I will tell you, Morgan, the best day in the world is where you don't care if you get triggered anymore. That shift in treatment where you're like, or even better is like bring it on triggers. Because what I started to learn in my own recovery is if I'm being triggered, it means that there's something that I want to do that OCD just told me not to do. So if I'm at the dentist and I'm getting my x-rays and I get triggered, it's like, aha, well, I know I need to do x-rays for dental health, and OCD's come up with this whole story where I can't. This is an opportunity for me to lean in, get my dental work, and then be happy like, hey, I'm doing what I want to do. So I know you're not there yet, Morgan. You're just starting, but just wanted to say that I promise you there'll be a day where triggers are not impactful.
Yeah. And to answer your question as well, like, yes, this happens all the time. So you are not the only one. Lots of people get nervous and anxious about this. And actually, that is a huge piece of OCD, right? It's called avoidance. So what we know is that the way OCD is fed, the way the OCD cycle continues to grow is by either engagement in compulsions or avoidance behaviors. And so lots of individuals who are afraid of getting triggered by certain situations, whether it's going to lunch, going to dinner, eating, talking to someone, watching a video, they start to avoid that so that they can avoid being triggered. However, that contributes to the OCD cycle just as much, if not sometimes more, in my opinion, as a compulsion. So like Chris said, we want to be able to help you change your mindset, but you're going to really be able to do that through active ERP. So I want to encourage you to make sure you're seeing a clinician and talking to them about what are the things that you're avoiding. So many times I get the question, as I'm sure you do, Chris, where people will say, okay, I've got a patient with these triggers and these intrusive thoughts. What exposure should they do? And the answer is like, well, I don't know. They're not my patient. And what I want them to ask the patient is, what are you avoiding? What are the things in your life, if you didn't have OCD, you'd be doing? What are the things that you aren't doing because of your OCD? That's where we want to start treatment-wise, right? So if there's certain things you wish you were doing, or you want to be doing, we start there, and that's where we start treatment.
Exactly.
Wow. Spence says, was that conference 2007 when Jeff Bell was the keynote? Could it have been that long ago, Chris?
You and I are 21, so that'd be impossible, because we'd only be. No, I'm just kidding. What I'm gonna have to do is I can never find it when I want to find it. Somebody asked me the other day, they were like, "Oh, my first conference was in blah blah blah. What year?" I know there's a page somewhere on the IOCDF website that shows you what year all the conferences were. So we're gonna have to look that up, because I'm like, I don't even know.
I do remember, though, Jeff Bell. I think that's right. Like, I know I was at a conference with Jeff Bell as a keynote in 2007. It's just whether or not that's when I met you.
It was hard because I didn't get a stay. I mean, I was triggered. I don't even remember what triggered me, but something triggered me heavy at the conference, and I left, which obviously that was my journey back then. But that's why we're talking about, it would have been great if I could have at least delayed or stayed longer or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So next question, where did it go? So one question that I'm going to summarize is, if you are triggered about some situations that you've done in the past, or even past words that you feel like could be misused and maybe were inappropriate. And sometimes that happens, by the way, right? It's not always like, oh, that's totally irrelevant. It's like, sometimes we do feel bad about things we said in the past, or things that could be misunderstood, or actions we engaged in, but maybe now OCD or anxiety is latching onto them, right? This kind of real event OCD. How does someone work through that, and what do they do?
Yeah, I saw that question. They asked, like, what should I be doing instead of obsessing? Nothing. Really. I mean, obviously that's minimizing, but what happens, I always remind people, there was his name is slipping me, but he just wrote that OCD, health anxiety OCD book. So I'm really mad. I think he's in Georgia. He's in Atlanta. He's a therapist.
Josh Batalnik?
Yeah, I believe so. He was on a podcast talking about like health OCD. And what he really said, he's like, until you are in so much like activated pain that you go to the doctor finds out you have something and you get treatment. Your job before that is to do nothing. And what I tell people is, they're like, I think OCD springs us into action. But here's the thing. If you've said something or you've done something in the past, but you can't really remember, you can't fix it, you're ruminating, you're obsessing, nothing's changing, right? And so what I tell people is, what's different between us and people without OCD is, people without OCD wait for an incident to happen first and they respond. We respond to possible incidents. And that's why we're stuck, is you can't respond to possible incidences. So the analogy I always remind people is, you cannot take your car into an auto body shop and say, can you fix my bumper? Right. They go out, look at your bumper, and they're like, hey, I don't see anything on your bumper. Can you point out where the dent is? You can't tell them, well, there's no dent now, but eventually I'll have a dent. So I want you to fix that future dent now. So what you got to do, Bad Hand, I know it feels irresponsible and it's agitating, but that's the recovery, is to say, look, there is nothing happening right now. And until I have that incident, I will respond. If that incident isn't here, there's nothing I can do, and I have to move forward and take that risk by letting go. Something may or may not happen bad, but that's not your job to worry about until the day it occurs.
Yeah. So again, this is such a great question, and we get it all the time, because I think too, one thing I used to struggle with real event OCD and just in general is, when I would be triggered about past situations, past conversations, sometimes I would actually try to convince myself I did nothing wrong, or that wasn't like that wasn't something I should have said or not said. And it actually made me more stuck, because even though I would try to do that as a way to like, okay, let me do that and move on, I still was like, actually, I don't like the way I said that. And so I say that just because I do want us to recognize that sometimes with Real Event, it is okay for us to say, man, I wish I would have said things differently, or gosh, I wish I didn't say that thing, or I wish I would have done something different. But it's another thing to let OCD get involved to where you're obsessing and compulsing about it. We all know that's not helpful, and that doesn't do anything for you except get you stuck, right? So it's this medium of being able to say, man, I wish I would have said things different, or how, oh, interesting, that's a lesson learned for me, or I could do it better, do it differently next time. I recently had a conversation that didn't go great. And afterwards I asked the person like this, because they were like, this isn't really like the feedback I wanted. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, what were you wanting? They're like, I just wanted you to listen right now. And I was like, okay, I take ownership that like I jumped into problem solving mode and didn't just listen and wasn't just a sounding board. I'm sorry. And it is okay for me to be like, man, I didn't give them what they wanted, and I'm going to learn from that in the future, and I move on and let it go, versus obsessing for the next week about, did I upset them? And why didn't I, just listen? Why did I give feedback? How irresponsible, how selfish of me, all the things that I could have definitely, gone into had I let anxiety take a hold of that feedback. So I just say that because I do think this is really important, even with Real Event OCD, where sometimes individuals will have an event that happened and they want to not think about it, but all they can do is think about it. And sometimes I will say to our patients, is there anything you need to do about that event? Because sometimes it's like, yeah, actually, I do want to send this note or send this email or do this thing or whatever it might be, or, and I'm like, okay, well, then I want you to do that once, right? Whatever, because sometimes actually avoiding doing that or avoiding looking into it is a compulsion, or it's an avoidance behavior, and it's making it worse. So sometimes actually emailing someone or asking a question or thinking about or exploring that past event is more triggering than the suppressing that's happening. But it's sometimes the way we move on. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, Chris, but I've just had a lot of patients where they're like, yeah, my family says I should not send that email, I shouldn't ask that question, but they're like, it actually would be harder for me to do that. And I'm like, yeah, because not doing it is actually avoidance. And so I do want you to make a decision to send that one email. But what I don't want you to do is send 10 emails. And I want us to commit that if you send one email or you're asking one question about an event, that we have a plan around one time and that's it, not 20 times.
No, you're making great sense. And one thing that you just said is sometimes what happens is people are so avoidant and in their head ruminating, right? And just constantly like in their head, engaging with mental compulsions. And then the solution was a lot easier. Like you said, it's just sending an email, but the email feels scary to send. So the rumination comes in, and next thing you know, they've been thinking about something for 8 months. And it's like, well, what you can control is sending that email. What you can't control is getting minute by minute accuracy of an event that happened 15 years ago. You've got to let some of that go. And that's hard to do, but that's what good treatment will assist you in.
100%.
Okay, so my mom is watching, so she sent me the link. It was 2005. That it was.
Okay, 05. There we go. Not to age us, my God.
So young. Yeah, no, it was so
ago. That's 20 years ago.
I know. I've known you for 20 years, Liz. This is our 20th anniversary at the conference.
Yay!
When I see you. My mom sent it to me, and I was like, oh my God, what was it? But whoever said Spence was close. So Spence definitely gets an award. I don't even know who the keynote was that year because I was so in it, but it's awesome.
Probably Jeff. That makes sense. So at 11:12, I do think we should touch base on this. You did talk about it earlier, Chris. Morgan says, I hate trying to do research to look for help and understand, only to see people constantly saying things like this is incurable. It's very discouraging.
Yeah, I don't know why that messaging. I mean, I think people will emphasis that it's chronic, there's no cure. And I'm like, but that isn't really kind of giving us the whole story. I mean, I think of someone, unfortunately, who's been in a car accident and is paralyzed, right? Like they can still live a fulfilled life, but they're going to be paralyzed for life. Our condition isn't that, right? Like we can get really good, solid treatment. And so I think as a community, we've done a lot better. I will definitely say the messaging I've heard lately is much more uplifting, but it's also, the cool thing is it's not uplifting and a lie. It's uplifting and accurate. So I agree with you, Morgan. I don't think it's helpful. And often the only time I still see it is when clients are really down and I'll ask them what's going on. They'll show me a Reddit page, and I'm not trying to throw Reddit under the bus, but I think it's a lot of people that unfortunately haven't found good treatment. they're older, they've gone through this a long time, they've given up hope. And so it really breaks my heart when people are using that kind of verbiage, because we know that you could live a great life.
100%. Next question is, my son at 11:15, my time, from Cheryl. My son has severe OCD. No therapists who do ERP are in our area. We've found someone 200 miles away who offered to do ERP through telehealth. Many experts are out of state and cannot do telehealth in Alabama because they don't have a license for our state. Do you think ERP via telehealth is effective? My son is resistant. Chris, we need you here.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Southern California, so it'll be hard for me to go to Alabama because the weather here is amazing. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. What I always remind people, when I was doing my thesis, this was way before the pandemic, so there wasn't a lot of as many studies currently. But there were some studies early on. So part of my thesis was how people can access care that is difficult access to care, and the research out at the time did say that telehealth treatment was effective. And then obviously there's a lot more studies that came out after the pandemic that telehealth is effective. Now, what I will say is I find that sometimes if clients have ADHD, they find it really difficult to do telehealth, as well as autism. I'm not saying everyone with autism or ADHD can find it difficult. Also, my clients that if they've work remote and then they go to our session and they're just kind of like computered out. But I will definitely say this: ERP via telehealth is going to be way more effective than no care. The good thing, like I said, is telehealth works, and I've had clients I've never met, and they've got started with me and gotten better and are in remission and doing great. I think it really just comes down to your son, his preference. What I would ask him and advise him is maybe what he can do is give a couple sessions a try, because it sounds like there isn't anything that you can find in person. And then see if there's something adaptable that can happen. I have a client that gets a little bit of headaches and eye strain when we do telehealth. So we'll take mini 5-minute breaks, see if there's something maybe you could do with the format that can make it more helpful. But I will say it is helpful. It's just a preference thing. And maybe there's something you guys can do until you can find somebody in person.
100%. Next question. A lot of folks talking about the conference, and then also the conference costs. So definitely look into IOCDF.org scholarship options, because there are some available and different ways that you can get there. And then, like Chris said, and Chris, I don't know if you want to explain a little bit some of the virtual options for the conference this year.
Yeah, I was going to say also, I just saw a post. I think it's OCD Midwest is doing some scholarships for the in-person conference. So definitely look at some scholarship options. But what I would say is what's great about this conference is it's our first full hybrid conference. So if you attended last year, there was some hybrid options where you could watch the conference live from the convenience of your home. What I've heard hands down from my clients that couldn't make it from California to Florida is that it was really good quality. It wasn't like you felt like somebody was in the back of the room with a shaky phone. Like they really put in, yeah, they loved it. They said it was like very clear. It was very easy. There was questions you could ask, and then the questions could get were sent to the speakers. And now we're having more. So obviously, I hope you guys come in person if you can, because Liz and I would love to see you. That's one of our favorite things when people say hi to us at the conference. But if you can't, please, please, please look in the hybrid options, because you can absolutely enjoy the conference from the convenience of your home. I believe it's more cost effective, and it's really good quality.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I am hopeful that there will be lots of scholarship opportunities for individuals for the hybrid as well, should that be something that don't let the cost stop you from getting education. So please let us know if costs are a part of the issue for the hybrid option as well. One of the things Amy said at 11:19 is, I like Grayson's question of what has OCD taken away from you. My answer pissed me off and provided part of the motivation to take on treatment. I love it. And that's actually exactly why John asked this question, right? So John asked this question very clearly, what has OCD taken away? And the reason he does that is because he says, okay, I want you to now use that as your motivation to get that back, right? To make sure OCD doesn't continue to take things away from you.
Yeah, I love that.
Next question. Chris, do you see any? I'm going through them.
I was just going to say real quick, I remember when I was speaking with Ethan once, he said that in a talk. We did a talk at USC, And he said what really helped him is while he was doing compulsions, he was thinking like, what could this time be spent doing? He's like, I'm single, I want to date. Well, now, he's married, but at the time he's like, I really want to get my dating life going. And so instead of being on a date with a beautiful woman, I'm sitting here doing compulsion. So I think sometimes asking yourself, like, what else could you be doing is powerful.
100%. So let's go to Kara's comment at 11:26 my time. I have difficulty navigating wanting to do social action work while being told that it could be a compulsion where I feel like I'm never doing enough. I think that's a great question. So Chris, I'm going to let you take this, but so many times we see individuals talking about how sometimes we can do things, do it well, and it be values-based, but then sometimes OCD can be a part of it, or the rigidity, or need to do it a certain way. So curious how you would answer this.
Yeah. Do you know what she means by social action work?
I'm assuming like social justice type of work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of times, I always remind people really the only subtype that kind of is like made up is magical thinking, right? Like if I don't blink 6 times in the next hour, there'll be an earthquake in, Texas, right? Like something like that. But a lot of times it can be from real things that we experience. And so it is important, right, to be passionate about social justice work and to make a change and to really advocate for others. Sometimes if people say it's a compulsion, it's because sometimes OCD does kind of bleed itself through. So sometimes we're kind of rigid, or we might be exhausted, but we're like, I have to go to that event because there could be something I was saving. I remember when I was running I still run the support group, but there was somebody there whose whole OCD was she was doing a lot of work on human trafficking in Los Angeles. And but it was getting to a point where she was going up to Latino people and handing them flyers and saying you're being trafficked, and the person's like, I've lived in like I was born here, I've lived here my whole life, like, no, this is my husband, what are you talking about, right? It was just like so intense and round the clock. She was like constantly scanning, etc. So the recovery work was not to give up that action. It was very values based and important. It was just, where has it gotten to a point where now it's gotten disordered? That's the last letter D in OCD. So I think it's one of those things where what you would want to do with your therapist is what exactly, whoever's telling you that it's a compulsion, the whole thing, would it be a compulsion? Like most of us don't just like do social justice work 100% because of OCD, but where is your clinician or whoever is advising you that it could be a compulsion? What are they seeing that they're thinking like, hey, this might be too much? So for instance, like, I had a client who had a tattoo and they were like, okay, stay out of the sun for a week. But he literally like locked himself in the house, closed all the blinds, went in his room, went in his office where there's no windows and sat there for a week, and like obviously got food ordered and stuff. He took care of his basic needs, but no tattoo artist thought that he was going to do that. So that's all I'm saying is find out where is OCD kind of taken over.
That's right. Yeah. Be thoughtful about what is like something you want to be doing and it's values based versus now OCD's playing a part of it, and only you will know that. And I do think, like, I always tell people this, but I love organization, and I love like my fridge to be organized, my pantry, my closet. Like it actually makes me really happy. I enjoy it. And so many times I'll have people saying things like, oh, this is Liz's OCD or this. And I'm like, this is not my OCD. This is enjoyable. I like it. I like the outcome. Like it's not triggering. There's not a core fear if it doesn't get done. And so I say that just to say that sometimes, like, you'll know if it's a compulsion or it's a value. If it's a value, we want you doing it. If it's a compulsion, that means you're probably not enjoying it. It's probably becoming something that frustrates you, that is annoying to you, and it feels very different.
I have a question for you, unless you saw one earlier, but Paolo asks at 12:38, my partner has complex PTSD and a severe fear from contracting COVID to where she now exhibits contamination OCD, and it's led to agoraphobia. Would traditional OCD treatment work for her?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes and no. So, definitely OCD treatment, ERP will work for the OCD part. If there is an active PTSD diagnosis, we want to be doing PTSD treatment as well. We want to be doing that comorbidly is both disorders. We want to do that together, so combined. What I would want to know a little bit more though about PTSD is do they meet criteria for PTSD, or is it or is it that OCD has become so severe sense this fear, that it feels like a trauma, and because if so, then we can probably treat it just as OCD. But if in fact there is, like, we meet PTSD criteria, we have an active PTSD diagnosis, we would want to do treatment together. So there are lots of integrated trauma and OCD approaches. I think the question is, we want to understand the complex trauma, what it means, what it looks like, to make sure we're doing the correct intervention. For OCD and the agoraphobia, CBT and ERP is going to be the best intervention.
Yeah. Morgan asks at 1242, what is the exposure for harmful, intrusive thoughts? Leaning into those thoughts are so uncomfortable, and speaking them out loud is also uncomfortable.
Yeah, great question. I love this. And the answer to this is that it is going to be uncomfortable. So I just want to say that to begin with. We do want you to speak them out loud at times. We want you to be able to discuss them, share them in a neutral way. The reason for this is that you're not going to be able to go through life never being triggered by harm, intrusive thoughts. Videos you watch, social media content, things that you do will bring up those triggers. And so we want you to be able to have conversations, engage in information seeking sort of behaviors, news, that sort of stuff, that would or could elicit these triggers and be able to work through it. So we can't avoid thinking about these intrusive thoughts, avoid talking about them, because that actually isn't realistic in life, right? You're going to get these triggers and have them come up. We don't, however, though, need to necessarily lean into the thoughts. And what I mean by that is that I want you to lean into the anxiety. I want you to be able to lean into the unknown, but you don't have to lean into the thought being true. That would be uncomfortable, and oftentimes something most of us aren't willing to do. So Chris and I have done live streams that we encourage you to watch about, do you have to accept your worst case fears as truth? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Hard no, right? Like, you do not have to do that. And we would not want you to feel like, okay, if I'm having harm, intrusive thoughts about stabbing my sister, I don't have to do exposures where I just imagine myself stabbing my sister all day long. And I don't need to be okay with stabbing my sister. Right? If you wanted me to do that, I would say to you, I'm not doing therapy. I'm not interested in this. This is not something I'm willing to do, right? Because our intrusive thoughts, OCD, goes against our values. It goes against the things that are most important to us. We're not going to be okay with those things happening, or with the reality that they could be true, if that's what we're supposed to be leaning into. And so when we say lean in, what we actually mean is we want you to lean into the discomfort that's there and do nothing about it. So I want you to do something like, man, I'm having this horrible intrusive thought about harming my sister, and I'm going to choose not to figure out why I'm having it or what it means, and move on. We don't want you to say things like, oh, I know I wouldn't do that. I know I'm not a bad person. I know my sister's okay. Going and asking her, engaging in reassurance seeking, because that will feed OCD. That continues to tell your brain that maybe you are a danger. You do need to do something about it. So again, it's about allowing the presence of the thought, allowing the anxiety to be there. And when we say leaning in, we mean lean into the discomfort and do nothing about it. It doesn't mean lean into the fear as being true.
Yeah. Really well said. And I'm glad you asked that question, Morgan, because I think this is something that I wish we could clip, hint, hint, Emilio. I wish we could clip what Liz just said there and put it somewhere on the IOCDF social media, because I would say that that's one of the reasons. My mom and I run a family and loved one support group. And one of the things I hear a lot from parents, if their child has kind of refused to do treatment, is they're like, oh, I'm supposed to, my fear is that I'm going to stab my whole family. And you're telling me that I'm supposed to just be okay with that. And I have to learn how to like being a killer and not care. And I'm like, whoa, the messaging is off somewhere. So yeah. I think what Liz just said is awesome. Real quick, I just wanted to, because I know we're at time, but Wendy said, my son has ADHD. OCD is a symptom of this at 12:54. I just wanted to say, Wendy, what it probably is your son has both ADHD and OCD, which are different conditions. And for anyone watching this is a very common experience. I think CHAD, which is an organization that focuses on ADHD, I get their emails, and somebody just put out a new study that it's about 20 to 30%. So please, if you're experiencing both, sometimes the ADHD can get in the way of OCD treatment for various reasons. So just make your OCD therapist aware so that they can give you the best care. I just want to throw that out there real quick. All right, Liz, what is your messaging to take us out that makes us feel empowered and feel great for the rest of our day?
End of April. I won't see y'all again until early May, which is so sad. Just that help and hope are always available. You know, I think so many times, so many of you watching are really struggling, and maybe you're watching this live stream from your home where you're struggling severely with OCD. And I just want to send that reminder that it doesn't matter where you're at and how bad OCD or anxiety is, there is help available for you. And the reason Chris and I and so many others do advocacy is to share that message. It is not to share a message that you need to suffer forever or that you have to accept always struggling with OCD. It instead is to be able to get to a place where you have freedom from your OCD.
I'm not going to say anything else because that was perfect, except come hang out with us every Wednesday, 12 Eastern. We'll have a psychiatrist next week. Liz will be back in May. And please check out the IOCDF.org for everything OCD. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And remember what Liz said, there's hope and there's help. Take care.